Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to use peg stamps as a jumping off point to create some cute faces. This video is brought to you by Rubber Stamp Tapestry. You can find them online at pegstamps.com. Use the coupon code Lindsay17 for 20% off your peg stamp order. I'll have all the information in the video description. Now, what I really want to accomplish with today's video is to inspire you to grab the supplies you have and make some fun faces. There are so many different products coming out right now for mixed media, but look in your stash. Do you have colored pencils? Do you have some markers? Do you have some ink pads? Do you have some peg stamps? You could probably do a very similar project with the things you already have. The thing I really like about the peg stamps is that they're very versatile, and if you're a beginner, you don't need a lot to get started. You don't need to get extra stamp mounts. You don't need to get huge ink pads. All you need is some small ink pads, or even markers like this that have a brush tip, because you can use those to ink up the stamps, and your little stamps. I'm working in a sketchbook today, but if you want, you could totally cut this out and put it on a card front, or work right on your cardstock for a to make it directly on a card. It's kind of nice to work on a separate piece of paper rather than right on your card front, so that way you can cut it out if you need to. Like if I decided I really liked her face, but I wanted to do something with a background, but I didn't want to try to draw around her, I could make a background, cut her out, and paste it on top. So very versatile. This sketchbook that I'm using here is nothing special. It's a Canson cream drawing pad. Cream paper is kind of nice, like if you're using a cream cardstock, because then you already have a little bit of like a base color there, and a white marker will show up a little bit on there. So what I did for this was I started just by stamping a few petunias, and oops, I'll show you that. Set. I honestly had to zoom in because my desk is such a mess, so you can't see the rest of the mayhem. This set was called Peppermint Petunias. Isn't that pretty? So I started with that, and then after I had that in there, I just started kind of doodling a face around, and I love this grumpy little girl that I made. Isn't she cute? So then I thought, well, I think I want to do like a crown of flowers. So I grabbed this stamp set here. This one is called Wisteria Frame. And I just basically made a little crown of flowers. And then all I could think of was kind of like just kind of loose long hair, kind of like a, you know, that loose 70s kind of hairstyle, and just kind of sketched it in, and then drew a little face around it. And then I started to think, well, what about using the stamps kind of like as like clothing? And so I just made this little fairy here where I just kind of sketched like a figure, and what I did was I have these little dolls here, and they're just really handy to peek at while you're trying to get proportions down. It's great, like if you don't have somebody to like stand, or if you don't have a full-length mirror, so you can like kind of get a figure. I just kind of sketched in. You could almost just sketch a stick figure in and then flesh it out. And then I just kind of stamped on leaves to make her little outfit, and then did a bouquet of flowers, and just kind of doodled around from there. I actually like the close-up faces a little bit better in this size, because I feel like I don't have enough room to get too much detail in there. So we're gonna do a face, and I'm just gonna kind of show you my process on how I create this, because I don't want to copy one I've already done, because I don't think it would come out the same way. I think each one is going to be a little bit different. I do like the idea of doing a crown of flowers, and I really like this this peppermint petunia, but I'm going to do it in purples and pinks, because that's what the kind of colors and the petunias I seem to see around here. So I'm going to start with this big one. I'm going to do this big one in a, like, I'm trying not to get my sleeve in my ink. I'm going to do this in a nice, like, fuchsia color. This is called Lilac Posies. I really like these little stamp pads. And when I stamp it each time, I'm turning it a little bit so I don't get, like, I don't want these flowers to look like they're lined up like little soldiers. I want them to look very, kind of like kind of loose. And you know what, even though this one's bigger, I'm going to do my smaller petunia first, because it's easier to nestle leaves around the petunias. And now I'm going to do this one in Grape Jelly, which is a darker purple. And I've recently re-inked my ink pad. So if you're stamping and it feels like you're not getting enough ink, re-ink them. It can be expensive to buy re-inkers with all your pads when you buy the pads, but if you're getting a reputable brand that's been around a long time, like Memento, you can get your mini ink pads as they start to go dry. The ones that go dry, just order those re-inkers, and it's a lot more easier on the wallet to do it that way. So a tip for making my leaves really look good is I'll use two shades of ink. So I've got this color Pear Tart, which is kind of like a light yellowy green, and then I've got bamboo leaves, which is more of like a sap green. And so I ink it up in one, and then the lighter one, and then I rock the edges in the darker one, and it gives me like a two-tone effect that's really pretty. And if I decide I want one that's got more light on it, I'll just rock less in the other color. Now when you're using the peg stamps, there is a little line on the side of the stamp, the ones from Rubber Stamp Tapestry anyways, I don't know about other companies, but there's a little registration mark, and that is going to show you where like the flower or the stem is kind of sprouting out from. So it helps you when you're lining up that you can know exactly where your leaf is going to start, so you don't end up stamping it in like upside down, or you know, the wrong end in first. So I think that's really kind of handy, and I like that I don't have to mask anything. I don't have to fuss with anything. I can just stamp and have the enjoyment. And feel free to turn your paper around if you need to get a comfortable, to be able to see where your registration mark is. I'm not turning mine because I don't want to mess up the I want you to be able to see it good from overhead, so I'm just kind of not doing that. Now I love these little, whenever I have a big swirl, even though this is a bigger stamp, I still like to do this last because it's kind of it's got a lot of open area, so I can even stamp it in there, and since it's got so much open area, it's going to be fine. It's going to show the things underneath through. And I like to stamp this in a darker color so it will show up on top of other things. So I just like to squeeze that in a few different places. I just got a little bit of smudge on my finger and pressed it onto the paper by mistake, but that's alright. I try to find a way to work those things into my design. Alright, so I think I've done enough stamping. I'm going to just go ahead and cover up my ink pads so I don't get my fingers in them anymore, because that's kind of how I tend to work. And I'm going to use some colored pencils. If you don't have any skin tone colored pencils, I really like this set. This is the Julie Nutting watercolor pencils for hair and skin tones, and it's really handy because a lot of times, even if you have like a full set of the artist's watercolor pencils, like from a big art company that were really expensive, a lot of times you don't have these neutral tones. So even I highly recommend them for like a supplemental set to what you might already have, and they're not very expensive. I think they retail for about 13 bucks. So so it's definitely a great investment, and they seem to be pretty low wearing. The company that makes these is Prima Marketing. What I'm going to do is start by just kind of sketching in an oval for the face. You don't have to. You can just start doodling in hair if you want, but I like to get that in just so I have an idea of what I'm working with. And then I also like to kind of get like, so my oval goes from there to there. It's really light. I should, you know what, let me draw it a little bit darker. Don't you draw it this dark because you might have trouble getting rid of the lines. But I'm putting it in darker for your benefit, but you want to keep it really, really light, okay? Okay, so I just want to get top, bottom, sides of the face. And then I'm going to put a line down the center, right down the middle, both the hot dog way and the hamburger way. So you can kind of see where like the nose is going to fall and where the eyes are going to fall. If you want the face to be looking one way or the other, then you take this line and you move it over. Okay, just make sure that the curve of it follows the curve of the side of the face. Now I want to put some hair in, and I think maybe, because I've done a lot of blondes, I think maybe I'll do red hair. But I'm just going to sketch it in, and since I have that outline of the head, I know I at least have to cover up that much. And I have a couple of tutorials that I posted recently on my channel on drawing faces and mixing skin tones and portrait stuff. So if you feel like you want a little more help, go ahead and refer to those videos. They are a little bit long. So this is kind of like an abridged version. And I'm going to go ahead and just reshape the face a little bit there. And thin out the neck. Okay, now I'm also thinking I might, now if I want her eyes closed, because like this would kind of be like right dead through the center of her eyes. So I like to make another line right below that. If I want to have open eyes, this would kind of be like a lower lash line there. And then I'm going to make another line in between my eye line and the chin for where the nose is going to fall, and then another line between that and the chin for where the mouth is going to fall. And I actually will do most of my sketching in a neutral color because I find it's a lot easier to to kind of wipe it away if I make an error or I decide I want to change something. So I just did the top lip. So the lip line separating the top and the bottom lip is on that that line that I drew. This nose here, I'm just going to get kind of a half circle kind of for the bulb part of the nose, and just get a little bit of a indication for the nostrils. Going up over, making my eyebrows a little higher than that midline that we put in there. And then if you're having a hard time getting eyes lined up, what you can do is you can make that hair come down a little bit more and cover up the eye. There's nothing wrong with that. We all do it. That's a little pro tip there for you when you see the one-eyed people with the hair in the face. Yeah, because we can't line up our eyeballs. I mean, not always, but sometimes it's like, oh, that eye was just perfect. There's no way I can copy it. But the big key to getting your eyes the same is to draw them at the same time. And your eyes are generally one eye width apart. And I mean, you can go stylistically and you can make them wider apart. That's very popular right now. A lot of the art journalers, go ahead and try that. Try different styles until you get exactly what you want. Okay, and just, I don't like that dead eye look, so I like to put the irises in at least right off the bat. So I've got that. And just throwing a little bit of shading in here. Now I'm going to go in with my lighter color that I started with. And of course, depending on the skin tone that you're doing, just the lightest shade of whatever skin tone you're doing, basically. So if you're doing someone with a darker brown skin, just use whatever the lightest shade of the brown you're going to be using. And I mean, this paper is cream, so it does have a little bit of that like super highlight color in it already. So this would be kind of just a little bit darker than that. And I'm putting this in fairly thick because I find that on drawing paper, which is, you know, not a watercolor paper, it's not really meant for, you know, a heavy wash. I find that if I put this on thicker with a watercolor pencil, whatever is in the pencil, whatever the like water soluble wax is, it just makes it dissolve a lot easier. So if I have this nice thick layer, it tends to not pill the paper so much. It's just a little bit easier on everything. You just want to layer those colors, and I really think that more is better when you're getting these really light colors down, because like I mentioned before, it does seem to make a nice barrier on the paper and give you a really good, it keeps the paper from filling, from pilling, and it doesn't lift up so much as you're wetting them down, which we'll do in a second, because this is just sketch paper like I mentioned. Now when you're doing the lips, doing that top lip a little bit darker looks great, because generally like the front face of the lip is facing down, it's in a shadow, so that just kind of helps you get that realistic look. Now I want to give her some eye color. Now you can leave your a highlight in the eye just by not coloring the area of the paper, but I have a couple of opaque white pens that I really like to use for that, so I think I'm not even going to bother with trying to preserve that. I like to use a couple different shades of colors for the eye, so I'm using kind of a lime green and a darker green. These are from the Bright Prima marketing watercolors, and the thing I want to warn you about these, if you do decide to get these, I would honestly recommend getting the brights and getting the Julie Nutting skin tones, because there are some duplications in the sets. That's why I have washi tape on some of these pencils, because I have a strip of washi tape for every set they're in, like the earth tones and the skin tones. I have a lot of overlapping, so I just do that to keep me from getting duplicates where I don't want them. Like there's several blacks and there's several whites, and it's just some colors you're not really going to use all that much. So you certainly don't need duplicates with how slowly they wear. So I'm just getting the pupil in here, and I usually don't like to put too much detail in before I liquefy my colors, but I do like to get my shadows in as much as I can right off the bat. Some shadow under the chin on the neck here. And I got the side of the face a little wonky when I was putting in the, when I was darkening it up for you guys to see. So I just wanted to kind of smooth that out a little bit. I'm just redefining that bottom line of the nose and putting a little dimple over the lip. And I feel like maybe we'll bring the chin a little bit down a little bit more. And all these are little adjustments that you can make. Now I mentioned red hair, so I feel like I need to get some more color in there. So I've got my darks. I am going to be kind of careful around the flowers and leaves. If I was doing blonde hair, it wouldn't be such a big deal. But with the red hair, I just want to make sure, since it is kind of dark and I would have more shadows in here, that I don't go over the flowers. I can go over the curlicues, but I just want to kind of keep the flowers nice and bright. And if you take your time, I mean, you don't have to take a lot of time, but if you take your time here, it's going to make the rest of the process a lot easier. So I'm just getting my darks in. I'm going really firmly. A lot of times watercolor pencils don't want to, like if you're coloring with them dry, they don't leave a lot of pigment behind. But I find that these are nice and soft and they work very well. I was very impressed because they're not that expensive. But like I said, use what you have because you probably have something that's going to work. And another technique I really like, and I've been doing a lot lately, is I will use like a regular colored pencil. I'm going to grab some orange just because I feel like I want something nice and bright. Regular colored pencil, and then I'll watercolor over it because it is such a cool technique, and then it doesn't smudge my lines. So if you want to like definitely keep your lines the way you've drawn them, and you're sure of your lines and you're not going to want to obliterate them at all, then try that, because that's kind of a fun technique. And I can fill in a little bit more with a brush. I don't have to go right to everything. And if I want to put some blonde highlights in, I can do that. Warm up the hair. And like I said, I like to put this in before I add my water, because once I add water and I go over it with a pencil and the paper is wet, it's going to kind of scribe the surface, which is nice because then you can get those strands of hair and whatnot. But when you're on the face and stuff, you got to be careful because you don't want to necessarily have that dark on there. Okay, so for my brush, I'm just going to use a water brush, a small water brush, but you can use any regular watercolor brush that you have. Just dip it in water, and you can use whatever size you like. I really like how it how you can, the bristles are firm enough that I can actually push pigment out of the way, or I can just kind of liquefy it. Like I can bring back that side of the cheek there that was kind of messed up just by pushing that pigment out. This is the small Pentel Gouache brush, and I do find that the smaller brushes, I think it's just the size of the brush, because the small Niji does the same thing. It feeds out water too quickly. I'm working quickly, so it's not that big of a deal, but if I wanted to take more time, I would be frustrated by that. And so here, I'm just going to start in around my leaves and flowers and be careful in this area. And just make sure that I'm not going over any of that. Now something I can do if I decide that I didn't have enough shadow, like I'm getting real close and I'm like, oh, that's really too orange, I wish I had a little bit more brown, I could take my brush here and I can get my brown, let's try this one right here, and I can pick up the color from the tip, and I can go in and I can add that shadow in there a little bit more. I can also go in if the paper's wet and draw right in with a pencil, except it will, like, I won't be able to lift that back up again if I don't like it. So by doing it this way, I have a little bit more versatility. But I wouldn't worry about lifting too much on this type of paper. This is a drawing paper, so it's not really intended for that. So I would just try to keep it. If you make a mistake, I just wouldn't worry about it. I would just kind of leave it as is. Because you have so much white in the flowers, if you wanted to like give them like a light pink, if color the white area is a light pink or something, you totally could do that. I'm going to switch to this bigger brush because I feel like that small one is just taking a little too long. You can see how this one's not feeding out the water quite as fast. Something about this reminds me of like, I think it's because we're starting with the flowers. I don't know if you find it the same way. I'm just using some of this leftover paint on my brush to do the eyebrows. It reminds me of like kind of Woodstock in the 70s. Not that I was around for Woodstock, but it kind of reminds me of like the Flower Power and the Flower Children. I think it kind of has that cool look. So if I decide that I need some water, what I'm going to do, no, I'm not going to squirt it here while I'm over my brush, while I'm over my painting. What I do is I give it a little squirt on my craft mat or on a palette or just something like that's not my paper, and that way I can get that at the tip of that brush nice and wet, and then I can come back in. I don't do it over my paper because I don't want to end up with a big splot of water where I don't want it and then have it lift up my paint underneath. So there's a little, that's a good tip to remember anytime you're using a water brush. I really like water brushes for their convenience for like traveling. I usually find that the quality of the water brushes are not as good as like the quality of any like regular brushes that I have, but the convenience makes up for that. So if you do find that you're frustrated with your water brush, go ahead and just grab a regular brush. There's no reason that you have to use a water brush over anything else other than the fact that it's just kind of convenient. So now I'm going in with this brown, and I'm adding some just streaks of color, especially on the wet paper, because it'll either push my pigment away that I've already put down, or it will leave a darker line, and I like having that kind of variety there. And I'm going to use that same color. I try to keep reusing the same colors as much as possible, and I'm just going to add some color in the eyebrows. Going to add some of that to the top lip there. I can add some to the jawbone a little bit. Any place I feel like I need a little bit more definition, I can go in with that brown. I want to liquefy the color in the eye a little bit. I'm just kind of, and sometimes I'll wipe off my brush, especially the small one that tends to be kind of juicy. I will wipe that off before I come near the face with that, so that I don't end up with a big bead of water where I don't want it. So I'm doing the green part of the eye before I go in and do the pupil. And I find that if I kind of have the pupil kind of like half eclipsed by the lash line, it just looks a lot more natural. And I like having that, I like going in with that black for, or is it like a black or charcoal gray? I think it's almost like a, that actually I did use a black for. I find that when I go in with that, it does give it a nice punch. But just kind of be a little sparing with it because it is such a dark color, and it's the darkest that we've used so far. And you have, you know, just less is more here. And I wouldn't put in all of her lashes. I would just try to get what you absolutely need. I just love this little flower girl, don't you? She's just so, looks so peaceful. I do want a little bit more color on the lips. So I'm going in with my brights. I'm going to go in with this red. Because I've liquefied color underneath, what happens is that wax kind of fills the tooth of the paper. So I can't, when I go back in to add another layer, I'm not adding as much as I would if I just went ahead and colored on that in the first place. So it makes it very kind of much easier to control. Just going on the edge with this pink. Oh, and another thing I like to do, because I've already used some stamping pads to integrate the color that I stamped up here into the face, I'm going to take my stamp pad and I'm just going to kind of press it on my mat, I'm working on a craft mat here. I'm just going to press it on there. I can pick that up and I can add that into the lips so that all of a sudden I've just made that tie in with this, with the skin tones a little bit better. And I can add some water to that because I don't want it too bright. And I can go right over the cheeks. And just add that nice like blush in there. I can also give a little bit of that to like the nose and the chin. And I think it really just really makes it look kind of pretty. Alright, so for final stages, I'm going to dry it real quick, and then we can use a few pens to kind of add a little bit of flair. I think it's a really nice touch, and you probably have these supplies in your stash anyway. So a couple of the pens I really like to use are the this paint pen. This is almost like a chalk ink. It's actually an acrylic paint, but it reminds me of a chalk ink pen. And this is one of the Jane Davenport ones. And I also like Uniball Signo white pen. They're both just really easy to work with. Now the Uniball Signo gel pen, you probably have this in your stash. It's very popular. This is going to be more opaque, so I save that for the end. So I like to start off with this one, and I'm using the smaller of the tips that come in the pack. This is a medium. You can also get a bold tip one, but I like to just kind of go in with the medium one, add some highlights. It has a slightly cool undertone, so I just want to kind of keep that in mind. It is going to cool down wherever you put it, so if you put it in the whites of the eyes, it's going to make them a little bluer. And I think I'm just going to put a highlight up here on each side. Now the thing that is you just want to keep aware of is that it will pick up color underneath. If you have like a lot of watercolor or pastel or something underneath, it will pick it up. So what you do to clean your pen is just scribble it on a scrap paper and before you cap it, and that will get it nice and clean. So then after that's dry, that has a nice matte finish. You could also use a chalk marker or pretty much any paint, like white paint pen that's not glossy. I think Pitt Pen makes one too that's really good. I haven't used it, but I intend to get one next time I see them. Now I can go in with my Uniball and I can add my brightest highlights. I can even put a couple extra in the eye if I want to make it look really glossy. Put a little bit on the lip. And if I want, I can also just add a few little highlights here. I could give her a couple little freckles. You can use markers for this too. You don't have to use colored pencils. I think the colored pencils are a little bit, that's not dark enough. I think the colored pencils are a little bit more forgiving to work with, but you can use whatever you have. I just want to make sure that the freckles are not going to look too dark. So I'm going to try this terracotta color. This might be too light. No, this is going to be just right. Just want to give her a few little freckles there. After looking at this for a few minutes, I realized that I wanted a little bit more going on with the hair. So I'm using some gouache, which is an opaque watercolor, and I'm going to go ahead and add some more kind of detail. If you had an opaque like green pen that you could do leaves and stuff with, I think it would be really nice, but I didn't have any nice leaf green paint pens, so I'm just going to go ahead and use my gouache here, and I'm using a combination of M-Gram, gouache, Prima color confections, watercolors, because they're really, these pastel dreams are really opaque, and I'm kind of getting my the colors I want that way. I'm using a little square brush, so what I can do is just kind of press and flick and press and flick and get some nice little leaves that way. I feel like after I put the hair in, I kind of lost a bunch of the definition. I feel like I kind of lost that crown of flowers look. So what I'm doing is just kind of dabbing in some colors to make it look a little more full, because it was just looking a little too sparse before. Of course, you don't have to do this, it's completely up to you, but I just found my stamping just kind of faded away, so I'm just kind of repainting in those leaves. I like that a lot better. And I could go in with a small round brush and make some vines. I think I'm going to use this Lucas gouache here just because I know this is real gouache. The Prima ones are watercolors, but since they were quite opaque, I thought that they worked pretty well for this, but I just know this is a real gouache. It's going to be a little bit more opaque, and I just wanted to get that kind of branchy look in there. Now if I wanted to do anything, if I wanted to add any colors to the white parts of those petunias, I can do that by just picking up any of these shades of pink. And I did add quite a bit of water to that because I don't want it to cover up my stamping ink. The thing I love about Memento is that even though it's a water-based ink, I find that in a lot of cases, unless I'm stamping like right on watercolor paper that has all that sizing, I find that I can go over with my watercolors and watercolor markers and add water to it, and it doesn't really bleed out. So I find that with the markers too. I find that those are probably the most difficult. It's like the most difficult marker to use if you want to do watercolor technique, the Memento, but it's great if you want to like stamp something and then maybe do a little watercoloring over it and then not have it all kind of fall apart on you. And then if you want to like kind of cross-reference that color, you can take any of those colors and add them into the face, add them into the lips or the cheeks. Just go easy if you're going on the skin so that you don't end up overdoing it. Because remember, we put our freckles on there already, so I just want to make sure that I don't do too much there. There, I like that. I often find that with the mixed media, the more I do, the more I like it. But you know, you do always run the risk of overdoing it. But that's what's great about working in a sketchbook. If I really love this, I could cut this out and put it on an art journal page, or I could even photocopy it and make it smaller for a card. This is probably a little big for a card. I think this is like a 6x9, or yeah, I think it's about a 6x9 sketchbook. So it's probably a little bit big for a you know, for a card, but I really like this. It's a great way to practice. It's a great way to find some different uses for your stamps. And stamping is a hobby, and it should be fun, and not everything that you do has to end up being a card or scrapbook page. You can have fun just experimenting with the materials. In fact, I am just so in love with this picture right now that I'm like, oh, maybe I'll put some more like details in the hair with my paintbrush. I just think every little thing I'm doing to it is improving it a little bit, and I'm just having so much fun playing with it. And you know what? I bet you have everything you need right in your studio to start doing something like this. You don't have to have, these are not the most expensive watercolors. You do not have to have, you know, top of the line everything. You can go dig in your kids' art box and find the supplies to do this. It's so much fun, and take a little time to play. Take a little time to do a little bit of art every day. Do it in a sketchbook. Nobody has to see it if you don't want them to. That's the best thing about this type of art. I want to thank Rubber Stamp Tapestry for sponsoring this video today. If you want to find any of the stamps that I used today and save 20%, use the coupon code Lindsay17 and check out the link in the video descriptions to all of the different stamp sets that I used. Thank you so much for watching today. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. And until next time, happy crafting.